Welcome to the Parkinson's Project podcast. The Parkinson's Project seeks to erase the stigma associated with Parkinson's disease while empowering and inspiring those dealing with the affliction to live life to the fullest. The Parkinson's Project aspires to build an engaged, supportive community while examining the journey of living with Parkinson's disease through a positive, empowering perspective. Here is your host of the Parkinson's Project podcast, Tim McNiff.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Parkinson's Project podcast. This is part two. We're interviewing Jason Kopacz. Jason is sharing his journey with Parkinson's with us. And a couple times in the previous episode, you referred to your surgery. And I believe if I'm right from reading your website, it was during the pandemic that you were consulting with Dr. Tuitt, and he made you aware of a potential surgery, a surgical development that he thought that you might be a good candidate for. Can you tell us what that is?
Yeah, so the surgery I got done earlier this year was deep brain stimulation surgery, and what it is that they put two stimulators on each side of your brain in my case it's into the global pallidus interna, and there's also an alternate spot called the STN. I'm not sure exactly what that is 'cause that wasn't the spot they chose for me, but really you put the stimulator in there and then you run a wire down the side of your neck. You can kind of see it here. It's popping out a little bit on the side of my right there, and then it comes down to a pacemaker here on my chest, and what that's doing is it's modulating an electrical current at a certain frequency and a certain amplitude to control my brain signals, and what that does is that helps either confuse the brain to make me function normally, or it can be the opposite way where it straightens out your signals in your brain to let you be on more is what it comes down to. Is Parkinson's is a roller coaster, right? You're on, you're off, you're on, you're off. Your medicine's never really flat, but the surgery kind of flattens out those curves. So you're never too low or too high unless you can be too high, but you have to take too much. You have to take more medicine than you should. But it really it blocks the bad side of it, where in my case, I'd stiffen up. I look like a zombie. I'd kind of walk around like this, and my head would be all tight, and I could, some voice inflection and all that kind of stuff going on. But the surgery really benefits from a low amplitude, low frequency signal in my brain to really kind of just to be more normal. And I've noticed a lot of improvements in terms of that, but it's been a life changer for me, no doubt.
Well, it was quite a process to go through. So talk about that, because you had to go off of your medication for an extended period of time so you could actually be studied during that process, if I understand that correctly. Mm-hmm. And not a pleasant process to go through. So why?
So a couple of things that with the surgery is one, like you mentioned, you got to be off your medication, because when you're laying on the table, they want to know, they can tell when the stimulators can go into your brain. They know about where they want it, but they don't know exactly where they want to put it before the surgery. They can tell the trajectory and kind of within a millimeter or two where they want to put it, but they want to be within microns or a tenth of a millimeter away from, they want to be in the right spot. So by me being off of medication, they'll know almost instantaneously, listening to my brain waves and the sound coming from my brain. And then also kind of how your foot is or your hands. When I'm off my medicine for a while, I have tremors quite a bit, but when they hit that spot during surgery, my body just released. And it was an amazing feeling for a couple minutes there while they were finalizing up the location. And at that point in time, I think it hit me that, this surgery is going to be awesome. I mean, that's just that couple minutes of that freedom where your body just kind of releases and you kind of feel normal for the first time in 7 to 10 years. That was, I would do the surgery over again in a heartbeat. And if just for that one freeing moment that you get, and I get that every day now. So
where would you say you are in terms of the disease progression post-surgery?
I've heard from different people that surgery takes you back 7 to 10 years. In terms of your journey with Parkinson's, obviously I'm taking enough pills right now where I'm not quite back to that level yet, but in terms of how I feel, I mean, I've never felt better since my diagnosis, even the 7 years, even at my diagnosis period, my arm was stiff, my shoulder hadn't moved for a while. I really thought I had like some structural stuff going on with my shoulder, and it was just Parkinson's at that time. And little did I know that with exercise it would get a lot better. But yeah, I feel great. Every day feels good. We just got back from a 2-week vacation out to Yellowstone, Tetons RVing. I wouldn't have been able to drive as much as I did if we did this a year ago. I got to coach my kids baseball this summer, and I had a blast doing that. And I'm looking forward to many more things like that as we progress.
I know a little bit about you, that you're not a complainer and that you do like to inspire others, but you have to have your bad days. What do those look like?
I kind of fight through it. I mean, my kids understand that I've got Parkinson's, and our neighbors all know I have Parkinson's, and my family is very supportive with it. And, my wife is very, very strong minded and very strong for us as a family. And she just drags me through it. And that's the one thing that we agreed upon at my first diagnosis. Is first couple of days is it hit her obviously harder than me, but I knew at some point in time it would come back and be hard on me, the diagnosis side of it and the ups and downs. But we agreed that we were going to fight this thing in the public and make sure that our kids understood what adversity was and how to work through it at the same time and be a stronger family for it. And she's been there right by my side the whole time. And on my bad days, she helps me. She knows when I'll have a bad day from time to time, and she knows that she can drag me through it, and I'm not going to complain too much.
Christy, correct?
Correct, yep.
So the more I learn about this Parkinson's disease, the more I'm being convinced that the role of caregiver is essential. Mm-hmm. And, you mentioned how strong she is. You marry each other and you say in sickness and in health, in good times and in bad. And it's been all that. She's your rock, isn't she?
Absolutely. I think not to get too far into the weeds on stuff prior to my diagnosis, but we haven't had the most straightforward health history with our families, our extended family, and even internally here. There's a couple of things that have popped up in the years prior to that have built us, given us the strength to take this diagnosis head on, and it's made us a better couple. And her pregnancies she had C-sections with all four kids, and I don't think that was the most low risk decision to make, but we fought through it together and we got through that, and there's some stuff with extended family and all that kind of stuff that has made us stronger, and she is my rock. And I'm grateful that I met her 16 years ago at our mutual friend's wedding, and she hasn't left my side since.
And along the way comes your family. How have your kids been affected by this? I know they're all still very young. So is this sort of like just the normal that they know?
They do, yeah. It's funny because we didn't really tell them exactly kind of what I had, with the twins being 1 and the oldest being 5 at the time. We kind of like, we'll just start talking to them about it. And, that was kind of why we started Team Kopacz, was to kind of teach them how to kind of what Parkinson's was and how to fight it and be okay with it and get out in the public and make sure that people understand that I'm not going anywhere. And, if I have a tremor that day, then I have a tremor that day. And my little girl, when she was probably about 3 at one night, looked at me and said, "Why do you shuffle your feet and mommy doesn't?" And I was like, I didn't realize she was watching me that close. And I said, well, I've got Parkinson's. She goes, you're not going to die, are you? And I said, absolutely not. I'm not going to die from this. I'm going to die with it, but I'm not going to die from it. So she kind of understood that something was different with Daddy, even at 3 years old. But, my kids wear Team Kopacz shirts to school every day. And I got a saying that of PD did not win today. That's kind of my motto, is one day at a time. And they wear those shirts to school and to baseball practice. And it's kind of just, it's ingrained with us, but it's not taking over our life.
Team Kopacz, you got to have a support system, and it seems like you have really an extended support system. I don't have much of any way to compare it to, but looking at your website and what you guys have set for your mission and your fundraising and what you've accomplished, it seems as if you got a lot of people that have bought into this and have been with you as much as they can be on this journey.
Yeah, we Team Kopacz started out just the 6 of us thinking about it as how do we motivate our family to get better prepared for what the future brings, and then a lot of our close friends and a lot of our close family joined in, and then my work joined in, and Polaris has been there from day one. I mean, I didn't tell them. I just started my career at Polaris 2 months prior to my diagnosis, and that's a scary place to be when you're 36 years old and you're hoping that this next career move is the one that sets you up for the rest of your life. But I didn't tell them. They all kind of knew something was going on, but we worked through it. And then I finally told them, they're like, yeah, so be it. Let's get it done. We'll support you with whatever you need to get it done. And, we've been appreciative for that. And then this year we had 51 teams at our golf tournament, which is amazing. 51 foursomes at our golf tournament. It's our biggest one ever. And, we met people from Team Fox. We met people from the Parkinson's Foundation, University of Minnesota. It's amazing how much a little bit of bad luck can bring people together and motivate people to get a cure. They say that Parkinson's is the AIDS of it. The AIDS. Parkinson's has the same funding and same levels of epidemic that AIDS did in the 80s, now in the 2020s, right? I mean, and it's only going to grow. So they're likening it to the early 80s right now for AIDS, where kind of the stigma was bad, and not to get into that stuff too much, but the funding was low. Not a lot of people knew about what AIDS was and all that kind of stuff. And now look at it 30 years later, nobody's really talking about it, right? Or 40 years later, nobody's talking about it. So Michael J. Fox started that journey in the early 2000s, and we're going to help join that fight and continue to move forward to hopefully in 20 years or so, we're not talking about Parkinson's as much as we are today.
Yeah, I looked at, again, your list of sponsors, I think, for your golf tournament, and there was more than 20 of them on there. And you brought up Polaris, and I was going to ask you about that. And I'd heard even before you and I met from some people about what a tremendous place it is to work. I mean, you really seem like, you landed in a good spot, and it's wonderful to hear that they have stood by you. You also mentioned Team Fox, and you mentioned the University of Minnesota. So if you're going to have Parkinson's disease, and I'm not wishing it on anybody, there are worse places to be than in this area, where you do have the University of Minnesota, you do have the Mayo Clinic, and you have I'm blank on it in Golden Valley. There's another.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm not sure how that trifecta came around in Minnesota with Mayo and University of Minnesota and Struthers in our backyard.
Thank you.
A lot of it, I think, has to do with the farming community. Honestly, I grew up in Brooklyn Park prior to the Highway 252 coming through, and honestly, I grew up on my grandpa's farm from 1905, a small hobby farm, and where there's a lot of runoff from the potatoes and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of conspiracy theories, whether or not the nitrates and all that kind of stuff, and Edinburgh golf courses there and all that stuff too that I worked at, and a lot of pesticides. and all that kind of stuff. But I think University of Minnesota is big on Parkinson's research for that reason, because we have a lot of farmers from the 80s and 90s that are starting to get Parkinson's or have had Parkinson's or whatnot. So I think this was kind of a natural location for them to kind of hunker down and start doing some research. You know, my grandma went to University of Minnesota in the 80s, and the same surgery that I had in January, she was offered that in experimental mode before the FDA approved it, and she told them no, because she would have been the first or second person in Minnesota to have that surgery. And you know, they just kind of grow from there. And the University of Minnesota is amazing. Dr. Tuitt, Dr. McGovern, Dr. Vitek. I mean, they're all neurologists by training, but I think every one of them would be successful in kickboxing, you know, or boxing matches and all that kind of stuff, because they want to win. I mean, that's the winning spirit that the University of Minnesota brings to Parkinson's is amazing. It's definitely motivating, and that's why I'm fighting for them, and I'm fighting for myself to so I can be one of the first people there to get that cure when it does happen.
Well, I was looking at your schedule. I mean, we're talking at this conversation on the second day of September. You have quite an aggressive schedule ahead of you in 2021. Can you tell us kind of what the overview of what the rest of your calendar year looks like?
Yeah. So, in 2 weeks, I'm running the Elm Creek half marathon as preparation for the Twin Cities Marathon on October 3rd, which I'll be running the full marathon 26.2, and my neurosurgeon, Dr. Robert McGovern, is going to be running with me in the Twin Cities Marathon. He's a 3-hour marathoner guy. I'm a 5.5 hours. So I'll be in the back. He'll be in the front. He's trying to qualify for Boston Marathon this year. So I'm hoping he's been training. I text him every once in a while, but he's hoping to qualify for Boston this year. And then a month later, I'm flying out to New York City to run the 50th anniversary of the New York City Marathon with the Michael J. Fox Foundation. So hopefully that doesn't get canceled by the pandemic, and, you know, God willing, I run a good time at the Twin Cities Marathon. I qualify for the Boston Marathon. I have qualified for it once, but due to the pandemic, I didn't. I never applied for it. It just didn't fit in the schedule. So I qualified it at my first shot as a Parkinsonian with running a marathon. I'm planning on beating that time by at least 30 minutes this year. So should qualify again. I'll be out there next spring running the Boston Marathon.
We will update people on your progress. You told me in a past conversation, you dropped something on me, and it just has really stuck with me, and I'd like to share it if I could. You told me that more than once, doctors have reached out to you asking if you would take a phone call from someone who has recently been diagnosed with PD and help them along in kind of knowing what's coming. How many of those phone calls have you received?
I've gotten 0 calls from people recently diagnosed, and probably 3 or 4 calls from doctors in the Minneapolis area to talk through, to be available if they do call. And I think the hardest thing, I would have loved to have a phone number of a young onset person to call when I was first diagnosed 7 years ago. So that's why I make myself available if they do want to reach out and talk to me. But the one thing that my wife and I have discussed this quite a bit, and, you know, there's the shame of diagnosis and the uncertainty of the diagnosis, and, you know, you have a hard time telling people you love that you're diagnosed. How are you going to tell somebody that you never met before that has the same disease that you're going to be fighting for the rest of your life? So it's definitely hard. Every time they call, I just make myself available. And if they call, they call. If not, then, you know, I'll meet them at some point in time. I'm active in every young onset Parkinson's event in the Minneapolis area. So at some point in time, I'll probably come across most of them.
Help me with something here. And this is something that I've had these conversations with you and with Pat Forcia, and in my desire to try to help foster understanding around Parkinson's disease. And this escapes me. You just used the word, and I'm not faulting you, but you said, you know, the shame that comes along with this. And I'm struggling with that, because it's not like you were going out there and doing something that wasn't smart or unsafe, or you had an addiction or something like that led you to this. You didn't do anything. Where does the shame come from?
You know, I don't know. That's a great question, Pat. To me, it kind of comes down to you're not able to control your body functions as this disease progresses. You know, the tremor is one thing and the shuffling the feet's the other. But you know, some people get bladder problems, and some people have they fall down and all that. There's so many different.
You lose control of your body.
You lose control of your body, and you know, I think the one thing, I guess I'll put it in this context. A good friend of mine that I've known since really little. First time I told him about Parkinson's was we went to a concert at Target Field. I think it was like Zach Brown Band or something. We went across the road to the bar and had a drink beforehand. My wives were there, and he was all emotional that I just told him like an hour before that I had Parkinson's. And so he was all emotional, and then the bartender cut me off before I even had a drink because he thought I was drunk. And we explained to him and that I had Parkinson's and I haven't had a drink yet and all that stuff. And I honestly didn't think I was that bad at the time, but it was just kind of one of those moments of in the cycle of medicine throughout the day. And that's when it hit him the hardest, was the fact that he goes, you know, you might not ever be able to get a drink in a bar again. And whatever. I mean, it's a beer. It's so be it. But that's the reality of my life, is I might not be able to go into a place and enjoy myself because of this disease. And I think that's just the stuff that kind of sits in the back of your head. Like, well, I'll just stay home tonight and not do anything. And if I can't go and have fun with my friends, and that's the stigma that kind of comes with that. But
it's isolating.
Mm-hmm. Very much.
That's interesting. Well, because a goal of this podcast and of the Parkinson's Project in general is to try to help erase the stigma that comes with PD.
Mm-hmm.
And you seem like such a success story. You have opened yourself up. You are trying to, for a guy who never wanted to be in this role, you're making yourself sort of this open book so people can learn from it. Do you still struggle with the stigma? I mean, you kind of said right then, you know, I can't really go out and have myself, you know, a good time, but you can. I mean, there's people all the time that don't necessarily drink, but yeah, can go out and still have fun.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I think I probably should probably preface that by saying I can't go and have a wild night in the town like I used to, and not like I want to. But I think to me, it's just getting out and regardless of if I'm in a good mood or a bad mood, or if I'm feeling stiff or if I'm feeling tired or any of that kind of stuff from Parkinson's, you know, obviously I got to take care of my body and keep that solid, which I have no problem staying motivated to do that. But what most of my friends will come and we'll go fishing or we'll go hunting, and it just makes me realize that there's no time to be sad about it, and just go get it done and have fun. And, you know, regardless of how I feel that night, the next day I'm going to thank them very much for taking me out and doing stuff like that, because it can be isolating. And COVID was a good example, right? I mean, as much as I love baking cookies every night with my kids, it added the weight on, and it doesn't, and we had a good time with it, but it's just getting out in the public is a lot more freeing, I guess, sometimes
Sometimes you got to go cut loose.
Yeah. And, you know, like getting back to the drinking part of it is, you know, we all grow up at some point in time, but I've had to grow up a little bit quicker than I wanted to, I guess, in terms of not necessarily drinking, but vacations and all that stuff. And, you know, going to play golf with my friends. Now I go golf with my kids and all those things, and that a dad looks forward to. I can do all those things. And, you know, I can't wait to walk my daughter down the aisle in 20 years, 30, I don't know, whenever it is. And that's what I'm excited for.
And my second to last question was, what does the future look like? I mean, you're going to be there for your daughter's wedding.
Oh yeah, I'm going to be here. I mean, I'm not doing this to roll over and lose to this disease, I think I'm doing this all for them and my wife and my family. And, that's my motivation now, is those moments where I can walk down walk my daughter down the aisle and dance with my wife at their weddings. And my wife and I set a goal when we got married that we want to retire when we're 50, and I'm 44 right now, and I had no line of sight to get that with 4 kids. Well, it's made us sit down and plan that, it may not be ideal, but if I have to go retire 50, I'm going to retire 50. I think that's, if people hear that now, then they're probably think I'm crazy, but I mean, ultimately, what we've done in our 20s and 30s has led me to be successful enough where at 50, it's not going to be the exact tour in the world and cupcakes and roses like we thought it would be, but I can walk away at 50 and be successful and be present for my family and my wife. So we've got those plans in place, and I can still stick to those goals that I set when I was 20 years old, and that's what I'm doing this for.
You got to have goals. All right, you just said this is what I'm doing this for. I'm going to ask you the last question. What is your hope that someone who hears you and hears your story for the first time, what is your hope that they get out of it?
That the hard work will pay off. I mean, it doesn't happen every day. Living with PD is a roller coaster, right? I mean, one day you live well, one day you live okay, and next day you could live. It could reverse and go up, back up the well. It could go back down, and you could really feel the shame and really feel tired and stiff. But the reality of it is we're on the cutting edge of some cool stuff for Parkinson's in terms of cures or deep brain stimulation. There's some. I did some research this year that sets you up for like a closed loop system that. It's like a fuel injector in your car. If you need more gas, it gives you more current. If you don't need it, it's all sensed through your brain and how your body's functioning. So I did some of that research earlier this year, but just keep fighting. I think that's the one message I want to get out to everybody within the Parkinson's community is just fight this thing however you can. And, if you got to give up cheeseburgers, then give up cheeseburgers. I did that for 6 months last year, and I was down to the lowest weight I've ever been and probably the best shape I've been. But then as I got back out of surgery, I could add some of the protein back in. But it's worth everything you can do to throw at it. And you, for those moments, you do live well. So reach out to me if you need to. My like Tim mentioned, my website out there for Team Kopacz Foundation. It's got my email. It's got my phone number. I'm sure Tim and Pat and myself, our information will be on the Parkinson's Parkinson's Project podcast website and Facebook page too, but don't hesitate to reach out, because it's not as scary as it is. It's doable,
And you're doing it well. This is all about trying to create a sense of community, erase the stigma that comes along with this thing, and kind of give people inspiration that they can live a good life with this. And by all indicators, and you can tell a lot about a person by the people that they associate with. And in your case, Jason, there's a hell of a lot of people who want to associate with you, and that tells me a lot about you. So keep fighting the good fight.
Thanks, Tim. I appreciate the time, and it's been awesome. I think the hour or so that we've spent here is well worth it for the Parkinson's community, and well worth it for my soul and everybody that's going to watch. So let's keep fighting.
And it was an honor to be able to share your story. And thank you to Pat Forsea, our executive producer, for bringing me in on this project. And I look forward to working with you going forward as we figure out how to best deal with this thing.
Absolutely, Pat's been awesome to get to know, and as well as you, Tim. So thank you very much, and we'll talk soon.
And we'll wrap up this episode of the Parkinson's Project podcast. And until next time, be well.
Thank you for engaging with the Parkinson's Project podcast. Be sure to look for more content on the Parkinson's Project Facebook page, and we'll see you right here on the next edition of the Parkinson's Project podcast.